and I'm going to share my beautiful slides that I got all prepared for us. Oh, Lulu's here. Wonderful. So anybody new joining us, welcome, welcome. I encourage you to take your computers off mute, turn your videos on, and get engaged. Today, we're talking about mental clarity. You need to be crystal clear if you want to create a life you love, or at the very least, like. If you can't get clear in your mind about what you want, how you want it, what you need, you won't be able to create it. And one thing as adults, we're not given permission, and we don't give ourselves a lot of permission to dream and visualize and fantasize about what do we really want. You know, when we're kids, we're encouraged. Dream big, think about it, use your imagination. And I want to invite each of you back to that childlike curiosity and wonder so that you can start creating the life you love and want. So that's what it's about tonight. I want you guys to get off the sidelines, get in the conversations. I'm solo tonight, so I won't be monitoring the chat box as much as we normally do. So please just hands up or go ahead and say, hey, Jen, I just have a question about that, and get involved, okay? Much like we were in a live classroom, which would be ideal. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer McMaster. I'm a lifestyle architect, and I own 1428 Transformations. I'm also the Chief of Health and Wellness for the Special Forces Experience. My background is behavior change and organizational change management. So I'm all about looking at things through a holistic lens. I look at your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health and wellness. I look at it in the context of your personal life, your work life, your family history, your future aspirations, the nature that you have access to, your relationships. So it's very multifaceted. And the reason I do that is because we're very multifaceted and complex creatures. So when we want to make lasting change, it's easy to want to boil it down to Tony Robbins, latest and greatest quick tips, but that's not usually what works for sustainable change and lasting change. And when I talk about lasting change, I'm talking about transformation, literally transforming how you do things, who you are, who you want to be in this world. And I've been doing this for over 20 years. My background's registered kinesiology. I have a master's in health promotion. And I love what I do. And I love interacting with people. So please, again, as we're going through this, let's make the content real for you. I'm going to cover a bunch of different things that go back to, again, mental clarity so that you can create a life you want. And I want to really frame it in this lens of integrating so you can navigate your process, whether you're in the trials, signed up for the next process, have done the process, are here through the ultra long range course, or because you're interested in community, whatever brought you here. Really want to help shift that surface level engagement that we often experience and really start to integrate it so that we can embody it. And that really starts with this idea of knowledge and information. So that's, we pick up a book, we read it, we get some information, we tune into these summits, we tune into these education sessions, we get knowledge and information coming at us. So we're hearing something, we're reading it, we might be able to reference it, we might share with somebody a headline or a stat, and we know something. It's in our brains. And that's one thing, that's one level. That's one level of awareness. What I'm looking at is shifting knowledge into the integration, which is the practice of something. So it's one thing to know that meditation and mindfulness are good for you. It's quite another to take that and start to integrate it through your own personal practice. So, a guru might say 25 minutes of meditation every day. Okay, well, that works for that guru, but you're Jason and you're Paulo and you're Karina, you're Lulu. What does that mean for you? 25 minutes as a full-time single mom running a business seems really ridiculous to me. And I would just tell that guru, that's not accessible to me. So it's about being your own inner inner guide. So it's okay. Meditation, I get it, is good for me. Guru says it. I've heard it on a podcast. It's recommended in the trials. There must be some substance there. But really, what does that mean for me? So as a single mom running a business, 25 minutes of meditation a day is just not attainable. But I do want to do that. I do want to meditate. I do want to reap the rewards of that. So it's about figuring out what my practice is going to be. And that might be 2 minutes every other day. I really like this idea of creating a practice with the idea of minimum effective dose, right? You have a headache, you don't take the whole bottle of Tylenol, you take 1 to 2 tablets every 4 to 6 hours. You want the minimum effective dose. Same goes for everything else we do in life. We don't have to train for a marathon to be healthy. We don't have to run that marathon to have a metric of success. What does it mean for us? We don't have to go to the absolute nth degree. What makes sense for us? So once you have your practice, what makes sense for you, you start then putting in the repetitions. And like that childlike curiosity and wonder, you go back to it. You test it out, you play with it, you see what works, you see what doesn't work, and then you make adjustments. And that's perfectly okay. You're putting in the practice, you're putting in the repetitions, and you're trying different things so that you can get that consistency. You want to figure out something that can be consistent for you. So what does that look like for you? What is consistent? Is that 2 to 3 times a week? If you're starting at 0, once a week is consistent consecutively, and then you can build on that. And the whole idea of the integration phase is this idea of trial and error. And this is so that you can move to the next phase, which is embodiment and wisdom. Embodiment and wisdom come when you've practiced something and you've taken Tony Robbins' little nuggets of information. You've pulled stuff from the trials. You've pulled stuff from Thriving Man, from Karina's presentation, from your mom, from your dad, from your aunt, your uncle, whomever, and you've figured out a way to make it your own personal recipe. And then that becomes the habit and the pattern and the routine. And now you have lived experience with meditation. Now you might have lived experience with meditation that 5 minutes every other day is perfect. It helps you be grounded and mindful and present. And what happens at this embodiment wisdom level is, because it becomes a habit and a pattern and a routine, and you have this lived experience of making your own recipe, there's this really deep inner resonance that happens, that it becomes true for you. And then that's what you want to share with the world. You become that role model for the world. And a lot of the men in this community, and yes, hey, Lulu and Karina, I know there's some gals on the call tonight, but especially for the men, you're looking to become leaders. You are forging the path for men, for yourselves, for different role models than you grew up with. And that has to really resonate with you. To be a good leader, to be somebody who changes the world and becomes the beacon, you have to have that inner resonance. Your patterns, your routines, your habits really have to mesh well with who you are. They have to become embodied by you as an individual. You really have to believe in them, and that can't be forced. I'm just going to let DC in here. So that we get to that level where we can lead with that effortless wisdom. We have that lived experience. We've tried all the things. We've gone through the fires. We've done the trials and error, and now we can bring that back. And this is really important for mental clarity, because to get to the stages where you can have mental clarity to create the life that you really want, it takes trial and error. It takes pattern and repetition and routine. And the other piece of mental clarity, so you've got your patterns, your routines, and you're putting in that practice so that you get to that consistency, so that you really embody the practices. And there are practices that I'm going to dive into a little bit more. And there's going to be some key principles that I want you to start really thinking about goal setting around, so that you can create that life that you're really enjoying. And the idea is to shift from this survival mode. And I know that those who have been on my calls before have heard me talk about this. Most people exist in survival mode. They're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they might be underwhelmed, there's frustration, there's this longing or wanting for something different. There's this dissatisfied or disconnect that happens when we're in survival mode. And why I talk about the patterns and repetition is because when we're in our survival mode, it's hard to do the things we want to do. It's hard to create the life we want. And creation mode allows us to do that. So shifting from survival mode into creation mode, where we're down regulated, we're calm, we get our clarity, we can practice our patterns, we have room for curiosity and wonder, we have that alignment and awareness. It's where we start creating with our values and principles in mind, and we're honoring ourselves while honoring others. So we're putting up our boundaries, we're knowing ourselves well enough to advocate for ourselves. And within this, we'll also find that flow state or peak performance zone. So does anybody have a question about that? Sorry. Okay.
In regards to the last 3 sessions of the balance mindset, burnout, and resilience, and then moving on into the last session, I got to have maybe 3 or 4 days to play with diet and be male and kind of surround myself in a home setting with 2 females and work on libido through diet, and also have that talk about cyclistic feelings and a lineal thought with job and what agenda is and how to reword things a little bit. So I've been having a great time with this. It's been fun, and I've learned a lot of cool stuff about brain chemistry and diet and gut health and how women feel and take things on and interpret them through different cycles in a month.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It's different. It's a good understanding about a more holistic approach to what you're talking about, rather than the criteria being lineal for men and women adapting to that. So I can see some differences, and I think a little differently of the way that you're portraying it, because I'm more on this level, whole, the same thing through the whole month. But yeah, it's a really cool program, and I'm very lucky to be here with Lulu, Karina, yourself, Jason. Guys, thanks for having me, man. I'm lucky.
You know what, Chris? I'm glad that you shared that. And I like that you highlight the difference. My language, my presentation on one day will be different than a presentation I do in 3 weeks, let alone me covering a topic that other people cover. It's different language, it's a different perspective. So recognizing that, it goes back to that idea of becoming your own inner expert. So Jen said that, and that resonated. So I'm going to pull that. And Nick said this. And Jason on the call, he shared a comment, and I'm going to pull this into it. That's called building your inner expert. That's building the embodiment and wisdom part to create your very own formula. And the other piece that I want to say thank you for is, yes, we are all fortunate that we have such a wonderful community to connect with and celebrate that. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. And speaking of that non-linear approach to life, so when we're, it's life where nobody's getting out unscathed, untraumatized, unchallenged, and without meeting adversity. That is life. And the sooner we can deal with that and accept that, the sooner we can start using and navigating and responding to life. So survival mode, we need that. We need to feel that upregulation to survive. We also need that downregulation to start creating. So we need to be able to spring into action, and then we need to be able to shut down and chill out and start thinking and creating and tapping into the more feminine energies that aren't quite so reactive and maybe masculine. And then the whole idea is to be able to shift in and out of them. So sometimes we're in survival mode because there's a deadline, or we're firefighters and we're in a forest fire and we need to be upregulated. We need to be responsive and reactive. And then, we leave the job and we want to be down-regulated and create and connect. Yes, Jason, what's up?
So I got a question I often think about when I see the ease of flow between up and down regulating.
Yeah.
And finding a healthy balance and a healthy way to go, especially from up to down. Like, can that be safely, effectively, healthily?
It works.
Holistically done, like in a quick fashion. So let's say coming back from a fire or something very stressful, getting back and now wanting to, in the span of hopefully like, let's say 15 minutes, that seems like a quick amount of time, but also, uh, at work, that might be a very short, or that might be all the time that I have to get down in order to not just be riding that high all day. Is that is that a healthy expectation, do you think?
So you might not like my answer because it's going to be multifaceted and it's going to depend on the
Sure.
situation, right?
Okay.
So, you might have that high, you get back from a call, and maybe a set of circumstances. You've been doing your self-care routine, you're journaling, your gratitude, you're feeling connected, you're feeling stable, but you have that like rush, you have that up regulation because of the call. And maybe somebody died or didn't die, or
Mhm.
maybe it was really traumatic or not that traumatic. But for whatever reason, you get
Yeah.
back, all the other pieces are there that support you in going,
Mhm.
okay, so I have about 15 minutes before this next thing. There's a training thing that I have to shift in mode to, right?
Yeah.
If everything else around you is level and routine and you have that set up to support you, yeah, you could do some meditation, some breathing to help bring you down. You can do some quick journaling. You can do a conversation with a trusted colleague and, talk about, okay, wow, that was intense, and explore the feelings and the thought and the energy that's around that situation, and then transition.
Mhm.
That could be fine. And sometimes there's going to be situations where maybe your self-care routine isn't on point, some things are happening, higher stress, the supportive factors aren't there. You come in from a call and you have 15 minutes to transition. What you can do is it's
Mhm.
intentionally down regulating through breath, journal, meditation. You do all the things, but you know that there's something more there that you're going to come back to. It's kind of like going
Okay.
through
Yeah.
like something like the process or a rite of passage. Sometimes in the moment you're able to be like, oh shit, man, that's it. And you're processing it, you're navigating it, you're unpacking it, and you're like, okay. And then you come back to it because there's layers to it.
Mhm.
So the key, I think, to answering your question is when you want to do that intentional, quicker down regulation so that you can move on to the next thing, it's to have the other protective factors in place. So hydration, the things that Nick and Kayla would have already covered, hydration, nutrition, movement, sleep habits, things like that, so that you're more regulated on that broader picture to deal with that micro moment.
Okay. Better
And I think
preparation makes for a better game.
100%, and being honest with yourself, because you can intentionally down regulate and compartmentalize something. Maybe there was a death at the call or something happened, and it's like, okay, I know there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to put it right here for now, with the absolute intention I'm circling back to that.
Yeah.
Right
Okay.
now is not the
Makes sense.
time. I'm going to, when I'm done the training or whatever that quick 15 minutes required you to do, circle back to
Mhm.
it.
Okay. That
And I
makes
think
sense. Thank you.
you're welcome. And I think also being prepared that you think you might have down regulated and you're fine and you're moving on, but maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, something bubbles up to the surface. Pay attention to that. I think the biggest
Yeah.
problem
Okay.
with healthy down regulating is that we think by avoiding or ignoring it, we're down regulating. No, we're just pushing it down in an unhealthy way. So being aware of when it's coming back up to be processed and having the space to deal
Okay.
with it.
Yeah.
And what Jason's asking there is that idea we're going to be in survival mode, and what we optimally want to be is in creation mode, but there's going to be an ebb and flow between the two of them. And the more we can get into and establish healthy routines, the easier we can do that ebb and flow. And that's what creates that overarching sense of thriving, doing well despite the challenges, and maybe even doing well because of the challenges. Really using that idea of post-traumatic growth and leveraging that idea that we can grow and expand and be better even with those adversities, if we do the proper self-care things, which I'm going to get into, to really support that process. Okay, Jason?
Sure.
So really quickly, thinking about some of the reasons we're in survival mode.
Hey, Jen,
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I don't know what happened. I couldn't put my hands up. I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind, regarding to the last slide.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So the survive mode.
Yeah.
I feel I'm stuck there. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, I haven't been in a very challenging moment of my life. I just moved back to Canada after a year abroad, and financially not doing so well. Um, and I feel stuck there. And I have been trying to think and do different things to go to the creative space, but I feel stuck. Do you guys do you guys have any suggestions like in what some techniques or some things that could help sometimes you leave that space where you feel that you're stuck?
yes, absolutely. And it's so timely, Paolo, that you asked that question. So what I wanted to cover next is this idea of why we get stuck in survival mode. So I'm going to talk about that. And then right after that, I'm going to
Oh,
dive in how to get out of that, like some ideas that you can take and use and practice. Okay. So one of the main reasons people get stuck in survival mode is their inner narrative and their inner critic, that voice in the back of our head that might be having us relentlessly pursue perfection and hyper criticize who we are, how we're doing, how we're underperforming. And then when we do hit a milestone, we completely ignore it. So this inner narrative and this inner critic becomes this tyrant. It's always there. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's in Paolo, you just shared your situation, moving, and then there's the financial restraints. So the inner critic and the narrative start playing on that and hyper focusing your mind. Your vision becomes quite narrow when you're in survival mode, and that pain point, it hyper focuses, and it becomes quite difficult to think of the other things. So working with inner narrative, I'll chat about that in just a minute. Our embedded beliefs, our limiting beliefs that we're exposed to as children and reinforced throughout our lives, have us on autopilot. We can't open up those blinders in survival mode because of these embedded beliefs. I'm not good enough. Our financial blueprints, I'm not meant to make more than this. I only have this education, and therefore this is where, my financial band is, or my career success band is. It keeps us stuck. And we have to work with people, work with ourselves to open that up. Victim mentality, this idea of being incapable of choosing what we actually want and need to do. And this is learned slowly over time and reinforced by language patterns. And I'll get into that in a minute. Emotional avoidance. Now, this is a really big one. And I know it's not typical for all men, but after 20 years of working in healthcare, it's one that I've noticed on repeat with men is emotional avoidance. That idea that big boys don't cry, you pull up your bootstraps and you get on with it. So what happens is we've learned, and it happens with women as well. I'm just saying generally it's a little bit more common for men. We avoid our emotions. We don't sit with how we're feeling, and our feelings want to be felt. Our emotions want to be felt. They want to be acknowledged. And when we avoid them, we can push them down, but they'll keep coming back up. And the more we avoid, the more we'll get stuck because we're not looking at the muck that's creating that energetic stick. Stagnation, going back to what I said earlier, this lack of a vision and imagination, hopes and dream have this limiting factor on our momentum forward. So we think like, well, this is it. This is where we are. We don't have hopes or dreams for ourselves at a certain point. So that stagnation can keep us really stuck and in survival mode. And then speaking to a little bit like what Chris was saying was, having a community. So a lack of tribe, a lack of connection, a lack of community or communication can really keep us stuck because we're not talking, we're not able to have people help pull us forward. So that can create a lot of stagnation and stuckness in survival mode. And what happens when we're in survival mode is we access this limbic system. It was designed to keep us alive. Like think evolutionary, saber-toothed tiger, holy shit, we've got to run or we're going to get eaten. It goes into that lower limbic brain, that reptilian brain. It's very ad hoc, knee-jerk, very reactive to keep us alive. And it's just a small part of our brain. What happens though is when we're in that part of our brain, we're not in this beautiful mammalian brain, this prefrontal cortex, our executive function, our higher level thinking, our problem solving, our planning, our organization. We don't get here. So to speak to what you're saying, Paolo, when you're in survival mode, we're in this little feedback loop in our reptilian brain and our limbic system. So we have to cool our limbic brain to get into that prefrontal cortex, to start planning and connecting and making those pieces come together so that we can practice, have the patterns, and then embody whatever it is that we want to change and transform into. And what Jason, to Jason's point, when we're in there, we can consciously down regulate. We can do that with breath. We can do that with journaling. We can do that with conversation and gratitude. There's lots of ways to cool the limbic brain. We have to practice them though to get us out of them. And we have to practice them regularly if our mode of operation has been survival mode for a prolonged period of time and we haven't been in creation mode for a long time. That's where we have to start. So this idea, Paolo, of shifting from survival mode, especially if you've been stuck in it a really, really long time, is doing the base level practices. So creation mode is that alignment, that flow that I was talking about. And there are 6 principles, at least in the Thriving Man Academy, that we feel very strongly are the bare minimum. If you're in survival mode for a long time, you want to be pulling on all of these threads. And if you're somebody who can get into survival mode, but can get out of survival mode, you want to use these tools to help make that a quicker process. So speaking to what you were saying, Jason, about how do I down regulate quickly? Some of those ways are words and thoughts. What language patterns are you using? Are they affirmative? Or what's that, Chris?
Yeah, right there. And layering the transparency with that structure, what you're saying and our thought processes. If we work hard, hold on a minute. Let's reword we work hard with we work smart. Let's work smart. Let's put some emotion and some sympathy and empathy into other people and how we deliver working smart. Let's not be so self-centered in our lineal way of thinking, and go with those 6 topics from there. Can we do that?
Well, that's the practice, right? That's the art, is to take them and use them in however you feel. So looking at words and looking at thoughts, looking at your language patterns, what are you saying? How are you communicating it? Are you being affirmative? Are you using solid talk? Are you using reflections instead of projections? Are you using active language to help mobilize you out of survival mode? Like Chris said, it's not working hard, working smart. It's not, I have to do this. I want to do this. I get to do this. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this, and upgrading those language patterns so that you actually can inspire yourself from inside out and get that energy and momentum moving forward. Another one, and I said it to Jason.
Positive and making it fun and enjoyable and structuring it in a way that I feel it's a life that I want to live, and not putting in all this hard effort into my education and hard work and feeling burnt out because I don't agenda properly because of it, and finding a bad balance and not knowing if I'm being a people pleaser because I'm just trying to put all this. I've only been told to work hard. That's all I know. But if somebody would tell me to work smart, factor things, incorporate other people's thoughts into it, teamwork, brainstorm work, thoughts, emotion, love yourself, love other people, love work, love education, maybe it might be fun and interesting and find a new ambition for it. And that's where I like to Karina's psychology, and the structure Jennifer delivers, and Lulu's mixed cultural approaches of the neutral zone between both, and just taking the best out of both sides and mixing them together, right? And then of course we've got Jason, myself, Mark, and Steve, and we're just on, okay, take it, Yeah, okay, bring more. I can
And
take
the
this
difference is,
ride tomorrow.
I do want to highlight something about thoughts and words. This isn't absolute positive psychology. It's not just fake it till you make it. It's not just denying the pain, the struggle, and those things. It's a tool to use in certain circumstances when it's appropriate. It's not to avoid or to negate what's actually happening for you. It's to use and leverage these 6 tools to help you shift from survival mode into creation mode without having to do what, like Jason was saying, like in a healthy way, without bypassing important things. So you take these tools and you use them. Yes, Lulu, what's up?
One of the things that I wanted to mention was back when I did some work with you and learning the positive words. It's something that a lot of people may find very hard to do at the beginning. And I did, and you know this, how hard it was just to say, I love you to myself, right? Without tearing up or finding out like, why am I doing this? Changing that negative talk, self-talk to a positive self-talk. It's something that I continue to practice. And it's been a couple of years now, I will say, and since we started, and it has made a world of a difference. So I do highly recommend it to everybody in the group, that it does makes a change. It does makes a difference in yourself, and everyone around you benefits from it. And Jennifer, was and it still is a huge help and a huge role model for me to see it and to continue working hard for it. So I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for sharing all of that. And thanks, Jennifer, for, opening that world for me, because it did make and it still does makes a huge difference.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to hear that. And thank you for sharing that, Lulu. Our words and our thoughts, they are these energies within us, and they create momentum, or they can take that momentum and create that stagnation. Another tool is breath. So like I mentioned to Jason, 3 deep breaths can be that game changer. It can be enough to cool that limbic brain, because evolutionary, if a saber-toothed tiger is running at us and we're about to be eaten, we're not stopping to take 3 deep breaths. But if we take 3 deep breaths, it reminds our body and our brain, oh, it's safe to breathe. Like, it's safe to chill the heck out. Like, we can do this. So that is the start. So all it takes is 3 deep breaths. I would encourage you to build on that, perhaps box breathing. So the count of 4 in, hold for 4, out for 4, pause for 4, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, pause for 4. That whole idea of box breathing builds on that idea of 3 deep breaths. It gives us even more richness, more oxygen, more cooling of the limbic brain, so you can access that prefrontal cortex. So Paolo, when I'm thinking about where you're at, it might be really hard to start thinking positively when you're feeling so stuck. Breathing, though, is something you're doing already that you can leverage. It's something that you can easily go, okay, 2 extra breaths in this cycle. Okay, I'm going to do that a couple times a day to cool my limbic brain so I can access my prefrontal cortex enough to make a plan, or to have a vision, or have a dream about what I want next and how I'm going to do that, or make the call to connect with a coach or a counselor or a therapist. Nutrition, literally the fuel we put in our body. And I'm as big a fan as what we put in as what we don't put in. Like, sometimes elimination is easier than adding super nutritious, very complex recipes. If that's not your jam, cut out the Twinkie. If that's not your jam, cut out the Pepsi. Like, just look at the things that are low-hanging fruit for you that add value to what you're putting in or not putting in your body to fuel it. Nutrition, every cell in our body needs it, just like breath. So choosing, and finances can be really, really tough. So we're not looking at the imported fruit. We're looking at the freshest fruit we can get that's local. We're looking at we're looking at canned vegetables, frozen vegetables, instead of like canned soups or pastas or things like that. So making, again, minimum effective dose to honor that nutrition piece. We don't have to go to that next elite caliber training that the Olympians are using. Hydration. And this might be, again, not exactly what you're putting in. Maybe you can't drink any more water in a day because you're already drinking lots, but you're also consuming tons of caffeine and other diuretics. So you start cutting those out. You don't have to add 7 more glasses of water necessarily, but cut out the diuretics, right? So making shifts in a different way that makes sense for you because you're your own inner expert. And we really have to leverage that. Ladies, gentlemen, sleep. Sleep. It is so flippin' important. And I know most people aren't rocking this category. You have kids, you have a job, you have stress, you have tons of worries. Maybe you're in not the ideal living conditions, your sleep is affected. So again, looking at and talking with somebody about your particular circumstances so that you can try to figure out what are the practices and rituals around sleep that will work for you. Okay, maybe it's not getting the $100 blue blocker glasses for your computer, but maybe you don't scroll Instagram right before bed. Maybe that's your shift. That's where you start. And that sometimes can be enough. It's the minimum effective dose to get what you want, which is down regulating so that you can get that mental clarity, so you can access your prefrontal cortex to dream, to plan, and to execute. Now, movement. I put movement and not exercise because I think some people have taken, including myself in my past lifetime, to the nth degree and we abuse it. So movement is anything. It's rolling your shoulders when you're at your desk. It's getting up from your, watching TV and moving around. It's using rubber bands while you're sitting and watching your TV marathons. Literally anything that allows your body to move more than it currently does. Now, for some of you who are training for the process, who are in the trials, you have these exercise prescriptions. Remember, if you're looking at them and you're daunted by them, go lowest minimum effective dose. Figure out what works for you and start there. Something is better than nothing. So if that's yoga, or if that's a walk instead of a jog, and if you're not at ruck health level yet, then start with a walk with a light backpack. You don't have to do the march. You don't have to do the run yet. You can build up to that. And what happens sometimes when we're thinking about our programs and our planning is we get too linear. We think, oh, I've got to do it exactly the way the person told me to do it, or it's not good enough. Well, maybe that person didn't take into account where you're currently at, and there might be a launch path that you need to take to get to that. So you have to trust yourself to follow that and then pick up where they're making the recommendations. So those are the 6 key principles to physiologically set yourself up and support yourself. So Jason, if you're mastering these and you've figured out your pattern and your routine, if you come in from that call and you need to down-regulate quickly, this helps make it healthy with the ideas of being able to journal, to write, to talk, to communicate with somebody, and then move on to the next thing. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. Hand
I
up.
do
What's
have a
up?
question there, Karina, regarding breath. I know in the trials, Aaron mentioned pretty early on about a different form of breathing. I'm very familiar with the box breathing. I've been doing that for many years now. The one that he introduced was a 3-count breath in and a 6-count breath out.
Yep.
With very little or a minimal pause between the two. Is there a difference, a benefit between those two, or are they
Yeah.
essentially?
No, it's funny. It's like this the thing we do automatically since the moment we're brought into this world, and yet there's so many ways to do it, and they all have different benefits.
Yeah.
So the idea is generally box breathing helps you get into a rhythm. And then when you're looking at different breathing techniques, what you want is the inhale to be shorter than the exhale. You want to typically double the exhale. And the reason for that is to get all the air out and make room for all the good fresh air coming back in. So what we tend to do is we have shallow breathing when we're in survival mode. We're here, we're shallow, we're in our chest, and we're like, we're
Yeah.
rarely getting all that used up air and oxygen up and out. So that breathe in, long exhale is very beneficial.
Okay.
So that can be, sorry, I just saw Lulu pop something in the chat there. So when you're looking at breath and breathing techniques, Jason, and anybody on this call, is to switch them up. You might have a favorite go-to. Mine is 3 deep breaths. That really minimum effective dose works really well for me when I'm about to freak out on my kids. 3 deep breaths, I'm calm. I'm about to do a presentation, 3 deep breaths, I get grounded. But then there's different things that I want to do. Like sometimes more of what Brandon Powell does. Like he really like starts that almost hyperventilating type breathing. And then that does something to your neurofunctions, which can create euphoria and can cause, other physiological benefits. You have to tap into like, what are you looking for with this breath? Do you want to be a Wim Hof guy?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to use it when you're in the field and you're carrying all your gear, you've got your bunker gear, all of the stuff on it? Like, is it to be more efficient that way? Then you look up breathing techniques that will complement that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Lulu, I see your hand up. What's up, girl?
So one of the things I wanted to share, Jason, if you're looking, and for everyone, but if you're looking for like good breathing techniques, I know there is one person that I'm pretty sure, Jen, you guys know her, is Tracy.
Yes.
I just posted her Instagram. She's incredible when it comes to breathing work. She does it for helping like Jen and everyone from trauma to just grounding to absolutely anything. Honestly, look her up. I do a lot of work with her when it comes to breathing. It is great. Like Jennifer was explaining, there is certain breathing techniques that your brain just gets activated in a whole different way. Your whole entire body, it's not just your brain, your whole body, like your temperature on your body even changes from being super hot to being absolutely freezing cold. It's just crazy how a simple breathing exercise can completely change your mind, your body, and absolutely everything. And she's great. For me, she works great. That doesn't mean it's gonna work for everyone in the group, right? Because as we already know and everyone says, what works for you may not work for me, and one coach may work for me, but it might not work for you guys. But that's something that there is a lot of breath work facilitators that will do the work with you guys.
Yes.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
And I've given you guys 6 things here to look at and consider as tools to help you go from upregulated to downregulated. Now, if you're doing none of them, trying to do all 6 at once is not going to be very helpful for you. Remember, this is about moving towards clarity. It's not a magic wand that we're going to get there tomorrow. So what I want you to do is, if you have a pen and paper, quickly look at this little diagram and recreate it. So what we have are all 6 of the principles, and then each rung is 1 point. So we're moving out from the center, 0 to 10. And what I want you to do is I want you to shade in how satisfied you are with your current practices in these areas. And the reason I use a circle, and you can use this for anything that you're considering or weighing up, there might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 things. And then you can rate them this way. And what it does is it shows a harmony or a disharmony. So if you're looking pretty symmetrical, your circle's looking pretty round, that's pretty good. When you start to see, you're at 1 in breath and then like 4 in nutrition, you can start to see the disharmony of your practice. And then you can focus in and set goals on the one that might be lacking the most, or the one that's lacking and you really want to dive into. So that you put your momentum and energy into something that matters to you. So I'll go ahead and give you guys another 2 minutes to recreate this and fill it in. And if you want, you can take a screenshot of it and circle back to it. It's a tool that I come back to. It's one of my decision-making tools, I'll just change the words around it and put my options in, and then change the question. Like, how much do I really want to do X, Y, Z? So you can use it again. Curiosity, trial and error is that integration piece. And then I've moved it into embodied wisdom because now I can use it for a bunch of different things that make sense for me in my life. For all of you with your cameras on, jotting down, thank you. I can witness you engaged, and that feels good. We're
I
nearing.
have a feeling that watching me try and do that would be comical.
Well, you know what? You can
I like
you can all hold up your diagrams. Show me your art. Very well done, Jason.
I ran out of space and made a few mistakes.
That's okay. That's called life. That is life. We learn and we move on and we celebrate. So take a couple moments there.
I like to try and find a balance and tackle these things in perspective to keep it at a 5 at a level of that I can always back down and re-agenda and make room for other people and other events or reschedule for expecting the unexpected.
Yep.
Whereas that if I needed to bounce it up for a 10 and hold on to it at a 10 for a week, a month, a year, a half a decade, that I can exert that and know when my burnout's going to be and be able to make it measurable, obtainable, realistic, scale it, and summarize that every other, every evening, and evaluate that on the nutrition that I need to keep tackling these new objectives that are filling up the +5.
Yeah.
And sooner or later that resilience gets to a 7. And what I don't see is now I only have ±3. I can't keep raising the bar that much higher for that much longer. So when I evaluate myself on these questions, I like to leave it a reciprocal 5, where anything that makes it change on that factor and those factors, and brainstorm it with the rest of the group and say, how many of us are raised the bar to 7, and what we thought we had 5, we only have 3 left. Where is our balance in our life with our wife, our children, our job, with what we're taking on in our agenda now? And how do we back it off and tell people, no, it's too much, I can't handle that, or know where that barrier is and to raise that bar to an 8 to perform when I need to make it happen, or a 9 or a 10, and keep it at a 10 for 2 months if it needs to be there, and back it back down to an 8 and say, I think I'm getting to the point where I need a break and I have to back this down to a 5 to find the balance where I know that I function well.
Yeah.
So
That's using that idea of minimal effective dose, is we don't have to go balls to the walls for everything. We're allowed to bring it back. We're allowed to take it easy at the gym when we have an injury, when we're tired, when we're not connecting with our family. Going out to the gym for the 3rd time because we have to and we're white knuckling it doesn't bring us benefit. That keeps us upregulated. So being able to trust the inner tempo of our lives and who we are, playing in orchestra with everything around us, is so important. And when you're looking at that wheel, the idea is to let it inform your future choices. Oh, I'm not really doing anything for breath work. Oh, okay, well, that's something that I can do. And I can do, 3 times a day, I'll pause and take 3 deep breaths. Or before something, I love doing 3 breaths or box breathing or some kind of breathing pattern to signal the shift or transition between things. So when I get off this call and I'm going to go pack for my trip, I'm going to do my breathing, because I'm putting this away and I'm shifting into that space. And it's a really nice way to help my brain go from one to the other. So when you're looking at that wheel and you're thinking, hey, these are the 6 principles. If I practice these, I'm really supporting myself in down regulating, so I can shift from survival mode into creation mode, I want you to think about writing goals that are realistic, that are SMART goals, like Chris was talking about. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic? Are they timely? Are they the minimum effective dose to get what I need from that principle? And then I want you to think about stages of change. When you're enacting those goals, there's different stages that we go into. You know, we might be in pre-contemplation. We're not ready. It's not even there. And then you come tonight and you're like, oh, now I'm thinking about this breathing thing, or how does this really actually work for me at work when I'm going from call to call to call and there's a busy night? What do I do with all of that? Oh, I'm allowed to put that into a compartment if I circle back and I'm practicing all these other things. Okay, I'm going to try that. So then that's the preparing for action. You're starting to explore and get curious with yourself. And then you get to the point where you're ready to take action in the stage of change. This is that middle integration piece. That's the trial and error. That's playing with it. That's getting creative. That's really trying to figure out, okay, I want to do this breath thing, but this isn't working for me. Attending Wim Hof sessions every Sunday is not the thing for me right now, but I still want to do it. How do I practice and play with that? And then knowing that we're like, you know, we're on the road, we're up, and then we're coming back down. Like Chris is saying, sometimes other things will squish out our routine and our plans, and we have to know what we're willing to give on and what we're not willing to give on, so that we can hold and honor ourselves, and also not feel like we're white knuckling, going to die on the hill for this thing that really we can let go, we can surrender or adapt to a little bit more. And one of the things I wanted to chat about really quickly before we hop off the call is this idea of motivation. So when you're thinking about doing the thing, you're thinking about joining Thriving Man, you're thinking about doing the trials again, you're thinking about doing the process, scaling your conviction and confidence can really help you get a sense of your motivation. So conviction is how important something is. So on the one side, you would scale from 0 to 10. How important is this? How important is meditation for clarity? How important is journaling for down regulating for me? And then you would plot it. It's either a 0 or any number up until 10. And then you grade your confidence. How confident am I that I can do the meditation, the breath work, the journaling, whatever the action item is? And then you scale that 0 to 10 across the bottom. And then you find out where they intersect. So anything under 5 on either of the scales will have you feeling stuck. So if you have high conviction but low confidence, high conviction, low confidence, you'll feel frustrated. If you have low conviction and low confidence, you might be unaware or cynical. Oh, I can't change. I can't do it. It's never worked for me in the past. I've tried meditation. It's just not my thing. Or you might have low conviction. It's not that important to you, but you have high confidence that you could do it. You might feel skeptical. Oh, I could, but why would I want to? Oh, I could do that. I could quit smoking. I could do the gym, but I don't really want to. The key is to have that high conviction and that high confidence so that you're in that momentum moving energy. You're going somewhere, you're progressing your practice. And in this case, the idea of regular practices so that you're down regulated, you're in that prefrontal cortex so you can start creating the life you want is really important. One thing they'll fail to tell you when you're learning about psychology and motivation is this changes. Like Chris is saying, it changes, it ebbs, it flows. Sometimes quitting smoking is the most important thing. My doctor just told me I have COPD. I need to quit smoking. In the moment, it's super important. You're super confident you're going to quit. You're going to go cold turkey and you start doing that. But then you find out that your mom's been in a car accident and you get super stressed. And your stress coping mechanism for 25 years has been smoking, and you find yourself smoking. The shift in priority happens. Our conviction drops because something else had a higher priority, which was stress management around your mom in a car accident. Or I'm going to go to the gym, and you're successful with that. It's important. You have the confidence, but then your kid's homesick from school 3 days in a row. Now the priority is you can't go to the gym. You have to care for your kid. So that ebb and flow, that balance, being able to surrender and release and look at it and be okay, for the next 3 days, I can't do my program. That's okay. I'm going to start on the next day that he's back in school. So having that ease and that grace with ourselves is really important. And I'm thinking about you guys in the trials, post-process, training for the process. It isn't about being perfect and doing it 100%. That's not life. And that's not what the training is about. It's about figuring out what works best for you and how you can integrate it consistently in your life. It's better to do 80% consistently than 100% inconsistently. So you have to figure out what that is. You have to figure out what helps you get out of survival mode so you can shift into creation mode, so you can connect, so you can create, so you can create joy and moments and memories in your life that are the things that you're going to look back on and want to celebrate. And I can't emphasize this enough. And I love when I see a turnout like this and I hear how many of you all turned out to the other sessions, is community. Life is tricky and sticky and mucky and amazing and wonderful. And it's not meant to go at it alone. We are not meant to be doing this life journey alone. And some of us might be introverts and some of us might like to have our downtime and our alone time, but we will not be complete, full, satisfied, fulfilled humans without the connection of community. And that can be a small community or a big community, or it can be a mix of communities. We're meant to have people in our lives helping us carry the load, helping us unpack, helping us use our language, helping us look and problem solve so that we can get to the creation part. Oh, DC is back. And that is the struggle, I think, that a lot of people are facing, especially when they haven't been role modeled how to connect, how to share, and how to reach out. And that's what the SFE is about. That's what the trials are about. That's what Art of Adversity, what's coming next, the evolution of SFE is going to be, is this idea of community and connection and honing our skills and connecting with people so that we can see ourselves, witness ourselves, and then adjust as needed. And also be proud of who we are and celebrate who we are and the work we've put into it. Because you're here. You've survived up until this point. You've done something right. And you're in a community, you're making connections, you're growing. That is something that's beautiful and expansive, and it changes the world one person at a time. So being able to celebrate that in a community is also very important. I'm sure that Kayla and Nick, and I'm sure Matt will mention it, there is an opportunity. There's so many opportunities. The idea is getting involved. Find the people who speak your language, and not in an echo chamber type way, but who resonate with you, who challenge you, who open you up to new languages. Get in so that you can share that. And, you know, Nick, Kayla, Matt, and I leading Thriving Man, we do that and we love it. We also learn from you guys. We learn how to be better coaches and mentors. And you never know, you know, Chris, Jason, Paolo sharing in a call like this, you never know what you're going to say that's going to resonate or inspire or motivate somebody. So getting involved in communities, whether they're online retreats, classes, courses, whether the monthly calls with SFE or the Cape Verde expedition that's being developed. Find things where you can bring your expert. You are expert in something and you're valuable. So find those, make those connections, and get involved. And Kayla taught me how to do something here so that I could share this with you guys in an easy fashion. She's like, here, you can, if you need some more information for what we're doing in our community, I want to share that with you guys. I also want to open it up. What questions you guys have about integration, about where you're at, your survival mode. How do you create your creation mode? Let's open it up. I want to hear from you guys. Paolo, what's up?
No, first of all, I just want to thank you and everyone else. I think it was great. And it's funny, like, you listen to this, it's actually helping me to open my mind again. It's funny because when I look back a year or so, I was on the top of that funnel where I was maintaining a good thing for life for years. And it's like when you go to the gym, right? You go to the gym, you work out for many, many years, and you don't go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You're like, damn, I'm gonna have to start everything from zero sometimes. And that's where I got stuck. I know I can do it. Maybe now I'm a little bit older than when I started to before. So my expectations maybe now, listen to you, needed to be changed and have a little bit less expectation, more like proud moment.
Wow.
Realized everything that I do, maybe it's not going to be so much like before, but smaller quantities. But it's, as you said, it's better 85% done than 100% done, right? So thank you guys. Yeah, it was awesome. And yeah.
Thank you, Paolo. I want to say something to that. So expectations, we'll put them like this, expectations and reality. If there's any discrepancy, that is the degree to which you will be frustrated with your life. So if you're thinking you're going to do something and it's going to have X result and you get B result, it can be very, very frustrating, and frustration and discouraging, and it can send you through a whole mental pattern and spiral. So I love what you say there, adjusting, and not to sell yourself short. That's not what I'm saying. Adjusting expectations that align more with current reality, and then you build the expectations so that your current reality has room to grow, but it doesn't have to fucking catapult itself up and out of the park. So very important to adjust those expectations.
And career, and back to that, work hard at your job and you'll get what you want out of it. Career happiness and career. Love your career. Love the people involved in your career. And that's why I'm like, I want to have a career with Jeff and Jennifer and Karina, something that involves talking to them on a weekly basis. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? What's your thoughts all about? How was last week? Is that too much for you to handle? Can we push more on you? What's going on in your life? And I'm having a great time figuring out myself and what career is, and mechanicking, commercial transport mechanic, the mountains, the weather, and putting all the trials and tribulations into the different echelons of mining, the infrastructure of commercial transport, groceries, the military aspect of it. And putting all of these things on the shelf and going from job into instructor, into professor, into dean, and getting high marks all through the way, and taking out the books and saying, I'm your asset for truck driving. I'm Professor Chris, and what do you want to know? Here's the wealth of knowledge on my shelf. So in that aspect of it, I would like to leave it where the career is an adjustable pattern and it's not so structured, where I have more say in what I want to do with my life in that, in the people that own those technologies in those different echelons for the use of it around the world holistically, not just British Columbia, Canada, the USA, but all around the world, that together we can have a pretty good life, and every other people are involved in that too, or feel the same with that feedback, giving me those technologies that respect where I'm at, and I'm not raising the bar so high to me to figure out where I break at and fail, but to keep that mediocre 5 where I can back off to really dummy it up for people who don't understand and drag them along, or I can raise the bar up to a 10 and know that I can really go a lot further with this for 6 months if I have to build a
Chris,
company. Or
you bring up something that I want to touch on. I'm just being mindful of the time and wanting people to be able to hop off, and I can stop the recording and stay on a little bit longer. So what Chris is saying there about, career and being happy with what you do, sometimes we've got 5 things that we're unhappy with, and to expect to change all of them to joyful, fulfilled, satisfied, aspects can be tricky. So maybe career isn't fulfilling right now. Maybe it's relationships not fulfilling. So again, using an imagery, a diagram, journaling, writing can help focus you in on what is it going to be. So if your career isn't satisfying, but you have a community that's satisfying, tap into that community more. If you can't change your relationship right now because there's things that are going on, then find the thing that you can work on, because some movement and momentum in one area can be the fuel and the fire that fans everything else and moves everything else forward and brings it in. Because like Rick Alexander often says, the way you do one thing is the way you do most things. So learning over in the career space can be the thing that leads over into the other spaces and creates how you do that, your intention and your way of being in those spaces that shifts them. But you have to focus in on the one instead of the all, because that can be a little bit overwhelming and cause some friction, some stuckness. Does anybody else have any questions before I stop the recording and before we hop off?
I have just a comment if nobody has. In my last comment, I promise you guys.
That's okay, Paolo. We like hearing from all of you. What's up?
Yeah. So can you guys see this glass of water?
Yes, it looks like
So
vodka.
the way that I feel is that there's a lighter here, okay? The way that I feel, I was feeling like it was before the call. I was feeling like this. So if I take the lighter out, it doesn't work, right? And what Chris said, having people, the community. But after listening to you, I feel like this. Look. So now with this lighter, I'm actually light myself back in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That was so beautiful.
I just want to thank you, because I think it's good sometimes we have people like you. So thank you so much, everyone.
Paolo, you're really close to the smoke alarm there, so just be careful, bud.
I know.
Firefighter Jason's on it. I love it. Thank you all for showing up. It's so nice to see your faces, hear your voices, and have you in the community, and know that that's what we're here for. We're here to connect with, and we're not a community without each of you. So please remember that you're an integral piece of the community, and showing up and sharing and being involved is just as much a gift to us as you're saying it is for you in those moments. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out and tune into Matt's session, the last of the 4. We would love to have you there.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good night, everyone.
And every guys.